This is a public service announcement on behalf of the End Podcast. There will be adult themes and explicit language throughout. So if this is going to not reconcile with your sensibilities, please find an alternate source of entertainment or simply lift your skirt and grab your balls. Toodle pip. First up is there's been quite a few developments with both the Snyder Cut and also the DCEU. So in the Batman film, there are two things to come from set. Now, this is just over a week ago. The first is that there was a license plate that was snapped as a set prop, and it was in 2019. Now, because it's supposed to be year 1 or 2, I think everybody assumed that it was going to be in possibly in the 80s, and it's going to be a period piece. And the second thing was there was 2 people in costume. So you can maybe assume that it's around the time of Halloween, which sort of makes you think of certain Batman plots. And that was of Superman and Wonder Woman. So do they exist in that universe? The second one that I want to go through is the ever-expanding cast of Zack Snyder's Justice League cut. We're now supposed to be having Green Lantern. We're now supposed to be having Joker, Deathstroke, and the budget for I'm calling it a remake now. It's not a re-edit. Is spiraling over 100 million.
I can understand Deathstroke because he was teased, he was present in one scene. Okay, but the others.
Do you want to pick this one up, Tim?
Yeah. Well, one thing I want, just based on those facts, and then the 2 other facts I think that really ask the question, like, what is DCEU going to do in terms of its ongoing continuity? So the first fact, aside from what Matt said, is the idea that the Snyderverse, notwithstanding all this like $70 to $90 million remake, is going to be outside of DCEU continuity. It's now its separate thing, a Snyderverse, as opposed to part of the DCEU. And the second thing is just the amount of money they're spending on this remake. And I agree, it's not a cut, it's a remake. Yeah. 70 million at least, possibly up to 90 million. And it really begs the question. So those 2 facts beg the question of what they're going to do in terms of the ongoing continuity going forward, because those suggest very different paths. If you just take the first point, which is the idea that the Snyderverse is outside of continuity. So then you have the Snyderverse, which is its own separate thing. You've got the trilogy, or possibly now the 4th movie, right? If you're counting his Justice League cut as a 4th separate movie, and then everything else, including everything like Wonder Woman, Shazam, Black Adam coming up, whatever. Just the rest of the stuff that the slate of movies they have. It looks like they're moving further and further away from a kind of MCU-like continuity. And it begs the question, is that a good thing? Is that what they're doing? And is that a good thing? I think it could go either way, because on the one hand, if you just look at their TV shows, they've got wildly different tones to those TV shows. So you got Arrowverse, you've got Stargirl, you've got Titans, you got Doom Patrol, their own kind of discrete universes with wildly different tones. So there's really something for everybody to pick up if you want to dive into the DC television universe. So maybe they're doing that with the movies. And I think it might be not a bad idea, because one of the things about the MCU that people critique is the fact that all the tone seems to be the same, right, over time. So if you watch these movies, however many there've been in the first wave, they do seem very tone similar, whereas the DC TV shows feel very tone different. And so I think that could be an angle, a way to distinguish DC from the MCU, and a potentially a good thing for them. But on the other hand, the fact that they're spending $70 or $90 million in this reshoot really does not suggest that they're just going to cut this and just let Snyderverse off, right? It seems like there might be something going on further with them, especially considering all the characters they're bringing in. Yeah. So that suggests that maybe they are going to do something with continuity in terms of Snyderverse being its own separate universe. They can do a kind of multiverse with the rest of the DCEU. So that, it could go either way. Those 2 facts to me are like striking, because they suggest very divergent paths. I don't know. So those are my thoughts on it.
I think with the budget, if you're thinking they're going to get, did they say how many parts is it? Is it 4 parts or 6 parts?
4.
I think that if you look at the budgets of some programs like Game of Thrones, where it's getting up to 10, 15, 20 million an episode. And you think for HBO, all they've done is take on existing content and then adding that kind of budget to it. I mean, they'd probably have to run the numbers through to see if it's going to work out. I mean, I think there are rumors that Snyder's potentially going to continue with HBO content. And there was rumors that AA's cut of Suicide Squad, which I actually quite like to see, because I was looking forward to that film and it's absolute trash. For me anyway, some people might like. I think it's an interesting point where you're saying, is this a good thing? I think it's like the X-Men films, having Deadpool, Logan, Days of Future Past, and all these different plates spinning. If they're good films, it doesn't matter. People only bring in the continuity problem when the films aren't good enough. And that's when the criticism happens. But nobody cared that Deadpool wasn't in it. Nobody cared that Logan wasn't in continuity. It was just when Apocalypse came out and it was steaming pile of shit, that's when people started really like finding things problems. And really, they should have just been like, stop making bad films. I think there was quite a bit of that as well. I don't think people weren't saying that. I mean, I don't know if you've been on Twitter.
There's something to consider. It's that Warner wants to be in the Snyder business. They don't want to lose him. They need him. They don't want to take the risk of him making his film elsewhere. So if they had to finance a Snyder Cut, even a non-existent one that they are making right now, it must be worth it for them.
I mean, look what happened with James Gunn similarly. He could have taken his pick of any studios. When DC picked him up, they said you can have any character you want. You can even do Superman. And the same with Suicide Squad. He's been said that he's allowed to kill off any character he wanted, even Harley Quinn. So I think when you've got these big name directors, I think that their pedigree, it's not only about the star power of them, it's the star power that they attract as well. And it makes making films a lot easier. And then remakes for 100 million. It makes that a lot easier as well.
Yeah. He's profitable. I mean, that's a fact. I mean, people go to see the movies, and it might be they're just splitting the baby because we know that they don't have really the resources or foresight to create an entire apparatus of continuity, for 10 to 15 years down the road like Marvel does. So they might be just splitting the baby and say, we're going to make these discrete movies now that are going to be good. I mean, Shazam, very well received. Wonder Woman, very well received and distinct. And then keep Snyder, doing his Snyderverse stuff, and then maybe sometime down the road have a way we can connect them.
Well, so, then hang on, the connection is coming. That's with the Flash movie. So the Flash movie with Tim Burton and apparently Christian Bale and Batfleck, those have all signed up for that. Supposed to be there. So once you got Flash running through time, fucking that's it. And so that means everything's on the table. That brings the Joker in. That brings 60s Batman in. Everything. We're talking about multiverse now. So with the Flash movie, that's supposed to be it. So it just means DC can now, whatever the fuck they want, it can have its own pocket of the Batman universe. It can have Snyderverse. And it doesn't have to be this whole kind of thing that Marvel has already set the trend for. So I think now the race is or the superpower race is it going to be the Multiverse of Madness, or is it going to be Flashpoint? Which one's going to, really going to do the job of bringing all these random stories together?
Imagine the problem if they lost Snyder. We were talking about making big names come in and making film, but if they antagonized Snyder, or do you make other directors to come make film with you?
What we saw with what's his name? Who's the cyborg guy? Ray Fisher. He said that one of the reasons that he was happy to have Josh Whedon was because Snyder personally chose him, and apparently Snyder had such a good relationship with the cast. I mean, look at Batfleck; he's come back to reshoots for a TV program. That's the pull he had. So yeah, it's definitely something that they'd consider, like the actual staying power of directors and and they're pulled to existing cast for existing productions.